Waitress saw her father in Billionaire's portrait. Why is he there? His answer shocked her. Emily stood frozen, staring at the wall. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. There, hanging in the fancy office of one of the richest men in America, was a picture. Not just any picture. A photograph of two men shaking hands and smiling. One was Michael Reeves, the billionaire everyone knew. The other man, the one with the kind eyes and crooked smile, was her father. The father who died in a factory fire when she was 6 years old. The father she'd buried 20 years ago. Her hands shook as she pointed at the wall. "What is my father's portrait doing in your room?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Michael Reeves turned pale. The powerful man who never showed fear suddenly looked terrified. And in that moment, Emily knew her entire life had been a lie. Before we dive into this incredible story, hit that like button and subscribe to Bemzy Stories right now. We share amazing real-life tales that will blow your mind and touch your heart. Ring that bell so you never miss a story that could change how you see the world. Now, let's find out what Michael Reeves was hiding. Emily Collins was 28 years old, and she'd been waiting tables at the Golden Tower restaurant for 3 years. It wasn't the fancy job she'd dreamed about as a kid, but it paid the bills. Most of the time. Her mom was sick and needed expensive medicine. Emily worked double shifts whenever she could, saving every penny. The Golden Tower was the kind of place where rich people came to eat meals that cost more than Emily made in a week. She'd learned to smile and stay quiet. Rich people didn't really see waiters. They looked right through them like they were invisible. Tonight was busy. Some big event was happening upstairs. Michael Reeves, the owner of the building and one of the richest tech billionaires in the country, was hosting something important. Emily had heard about him her whole life, but never met him in person. "Collins," her boss called, "we need help setting up the executive floor. Get up there and make sure everything's perfect." Emily's stomach dropped. She never went to the executive floor. That was where the really important people worked and met. But she couldn't say no. She needed this job too much. The elevator ride felt like forever. When the doors opened, she stepped into a world that looked nothing like the cramped apartment she shared with her mom. Everything was expensive and perfect. Shiny wood, soft carpet, artwork that probably cost more than her car. "The office is through there," another worker said, pointing. "Clean the table and make sure the glasses are spotless. Mr. Reeves is meeting with important investors." Emily nodded and walked into the office. It was huge. One whole wall was just windows showing the city lights below. A massive desk sat in the middle, and on the wall behind the desk hung several framed photographs. She started cleaning the glass table, humming softly to calm her nerves, but something made her stop. Something on that wall caught her eye. She turned to look closer. There, in a large frame right behind where Michael Reeves would sit, was a photograph of two men. They were shaking hands and smiling. Both wore nice suits. One was younger, clearly Michael Reeves from maybe 20 years ago. The other man... Emily's cleaning cloth fell from her hand. She stepped closer, her breath catching in her throat. The other man had dark hair, kind eyes, a crooked smile that she'd only seen in old pictures her mom kept in a drawer at home. It was her father, Matthew Collins, the man who supposedly died in a factory fire when Emily was 6 years old. The man she barely remembered except through her mom's stories. The man whose old watch she still kept in a box by her bed. Why was her dead father in a photograph with Michael Reeves? Why was this picture hanging in the billionaire's office like some kind of trophy? Her hands trembled as she moved closer to the portrait. She could see details now. Her father wore the same watch, the one she had at home. His smile was real and happy. He looked younger than she remembered him. Behind her, the door opened. Voices filled the room. Emily spun around to see Michael Reeves walking in with a group of men in expensive suits. They were laughing about something, completely unaware of her presence. Michael Reeves was tall and commanding. He had that look powerful people have, like he owned every room he walked into. His hair was starting to turn gray at the sides, but he moved with confidence. He stopped when he saw Emily standing near the portrait. Their eyes met. His were sharp and calculating. Hers were wide with shock and confusion. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice sharp. "You're not supposed to be in here." The other men stopped talking. Everyone looked at Emily. She felt her face get hot. Part of her wanted to run away. But the bigger part, the part that had wondered her whole life about her father, couldn't move. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "why is my father in your office portrait?" The room went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. The investors looked at each other, confused. Michael Reeves's face changed. All the confidence drained away. For just a second, he looked scared. Really scared. "What did you say?" he whispered. Emily's throat was tight, but she pointed at the photograph. "That man. That's my father, Matthew Collins. Why is he in a picture with you?" The color left Michael Reeves's face. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. His hand shook slightly before he shoved it in his pocket. The other men in the room started whispering to each other. "Miss," Michael started, but his voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "Miss Collins, is it?" Emily nodded, unable to speak. "Everyone out," Michael said suddenly to the investors. "We'll continue this meeting later." "But Mr. Reeves," one man started. "Now!" Michael's voice was sharp and loud. The men quickly left, glancing back at Emily with curious looks. When the door closed, Michael Reeves turned to her. Up close, Emily could see he wasn't as calm as he seemed. His eyes were red, like he hadn't slept in days. His jaw was tight. "You shouldn't be in here," he said, but his voice was quieter now. "Who told you to come to this office?" "My boss sent me to clean," Emily explained. "I didn't mean to see anything. But that picture, that's my father. I know it is. He died 20 years ago in a factory fire. What was he to you?" Michael walked to his desk and sat down heavily, like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. He stared at the photograph for a long time without saying anything. "Matthew Collins worked for me a long time ago," he finally said. "He was a brilliant engineer. We worked together on a project." Emily's heart was racing. "What project? What happened to him?" "He died in a fire at our lab," Michael said, but something in his voice sounded wrong, like he was reading from a script. "It was an accident. I kept this picture because he was important to the company." "You're lying," Emily said, surprised by her own bravery. "If it was just business, why do you look so scared right now?" Michael's eyes flashed with something. Anger, maybe, or fear. "You don't know what you're talking about. You should leave before you get yourself in trouble." "No," Emily said firmly. "Not until you tell me the truth. That's my father up there. I deserve to know why his picture is on your wall." For a long moment, they stared at each other. Emily could see Michael thinking, trying to decide what to say. Finally, he sighed. "Your father and I were partners once," he admitted. "We built something together, something revolutionary, but things went wrong. He made choices that put everything at risk. The fire was his fault." "My father wasn't careless," Emily said, her voice rising. "My mom said he was the most careful person she knew." "Your mother doesn't know everything," Michael said coldly. "Then tell me what she doesn't know," Emily practically shouted. Michael stood up fast, knocking his chair back. "I said get out." Emily flinched but didn't move. She looked at the portrait one more time. Her father's smile seemed to stare back at her, like he was trying to tell her something. "I'm going to find out what really happened," she said quietly. "Whatever you're hiding, I'll find it." She turned and walked out of the office. Behind her, she heard Michael sink back into his chair. As the door closed, she heard him whisper something that made her blood run cold. You should have stayed buried, Matthew. Emily's hands were still shaking when she got to the employee locker room. She changed out of her work uniform in a daze, her mind spinning with questions. Why had Michael Reeves looked so terrified? What really happened to her father? And why did everyone seem to think he died in an accident when clearly there was more to the story? She drove home through the rainy streets, barely paying attention to the road. Her mom would be asleep by now. Sarah Collins had good days and bad days. Today had been a bad one. Emily had left her on the couch with her oxygen machine, watching old TV shows. Their apartment was small and dark when Emily walked in. She could hear the steady beep of her mom's medical equipment. Emily tiptoed past the living room, not wanting to wake her. But as she passed, her mom's voice called out. "Emily, is that you, sweetheart?" "Yeah, Mom. Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." Sarah Collins struggled to sit up. She was only 52, but sickness had made her look much older. Her once beautiful face was thin and pale, but her eyes were still sharp. "You're home late again," Sarah said. "Everything okay at work?" Emily hesitated. Should she tell her mom what happened? The doctor said stress was bad for her. But Emily couldn't keep this inside. "Mom," she said slowly, sitting down on the edge of the couch. "Did Dad ever work for a man named Michael Reeves?" Her mom's face went completely white. Her hands started shaking. "Why would you ask that?" she whispered. "Because I saw Dad's picture tonight, in Michael Reeves's office. They were together in a photograph, like partners or friends." "Mom, what's going on?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked around the small apartment like she was scared someone might be listening. "Oh, Emily, I hoped you'd never have to know about this." "Know about what?" Her mom reached for the old wooden dresser next to the couch. From the bottom drawer, the one Emily had never been allowed to open, Sarah pulled out a yellowed envelope sealed with tape. "I've kept this hidden for 20 years, Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I thought it would keep us safe. But maybe it's time you knew the truth." She tore open the envelope with shaking fingers. Inside were more photographs. Emily gasped. There was her father, young and smiling, standing next to Michael Reeves in what looked like a science lab. There were papers covered in complicated drawings and formulas. And there was a newspaper clipping with a headline that made Emily's stomach drop. "Tech partner dies in lab fire. Investigation ongoing." "Your father and Michael were partners," Sarah explained, tears running down her face. "They were building something together, some kind of new energy technology. They called it the Phoenix Project. It was supposed to change the world, clean energy for everyone, no pollution, no wars over oil." "What happened?" Emily asked, even though part of her didn't want to know. "Michael wanted to sell it to the government," Sarah said. "He wanted to make billions. But your father found out they were going to weaponize it, turn it into some kind of energy weapon." Matthew tried to stop it. He wanted to go to the news, tell everyone what was really happening. Sarah's voice broke completely. 2 weeks later, there was a fire at the lab. Michael said it was an accident, said Matthew caused it by being careless. But your father was never careless, Emily. Never. Emily felt like the room was spinning. "Are you saying Michael Reeves killed Dad?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "But I know the fire happened right after Matthew threatened to expose everything. And I know that 3 days after the funeral, Michael Reeves came to this apartment." "He came here?" Emily was shocked. Sarah nodded. "He stood right where you're sitting now. He gave me an envelope full of cash and said it was for my silence. He said if I ever told anyone what Matthew was working on, he'd make sure we lost everything. I was so scared, Emily. You were only 6. I had no money, no job, no way to prove anything. So I took his money and I stayed quiet." For 20 years? Emily couldn't believe it. I thought I was protecting you, Sarah sobbed. I thought if we just stayed quiet and invisible, we'd be safe. But every day, I've wondered if I did the right thing. Every day, I've looked at your father's picture and felt like I betrayed him. Emily grabbed her mom's hands. They were so thin and cold. Mom, it's okay. You did what you had to do. But things are different now. I'm not a little kid anymore, and I'm going to find out what really happened. No! Sarah grabbed Emily's arms with surprising strength. Emily, please. Michael Reeves is one of the most powerful men in the country. He has lawyers, security, politicians in his pocket. He'll destroy you. I don't care, Emily said firmly. Dad deserves the truth, and if Michael Reeves killed him, then everyone should know. Sarah started coughing badly. Emily helped her lay back down and adjusted her oxygen mask. When her breathing got better, Sarah looked at her daughter with both love and fear in her eyes.
You're so much like your father, she whispered. Brave and stubborn and won't let things go.
That's what I'm afraid of. Emily kissed her mom's forehead. Get some rest. I'll be careful, I promise. But as she walked to her tiny bedroom, Emily knew she was making a promise she might not be able to keep. Because once you start uncovering secrets that powerful people have killed to hide, being careful might not be enough. She pulled out her laptop and started searching online for information about the Phoenix Project. There wasn't much. A few old articles about a promising new energy technology, some press releases from Reeves Corporation about government contracts, but nothing about her father, nothing about the fire, nothing about a cover-up. Someone had scrubbed the internet clean. Emily's phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Collins? A woman's voice, professional and cold. Yes? This is Ashley Bennett calling on behalf of Mr. Reeves. He would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow morning. A car will pick you up at 9. I don't think Mr. Reeves insists it's important for both of you. The line went dead. Emily stared at her phone. Part of her knew she shouldn't go. Going back to Michael Reeves was dangerous. But the bigger part, the part that needed answers, knew she had no choice. She didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her father's face in that photograph, smiling, happy, alive. And she heard Michael Reeves's whispered words, "You should have stayed buried." At 8:45 the next morning, Emily stood outside her apartment building wearing the nicest clothes she owned, a simple black dress and jacket she'd bought for job interviews. Right at 9, a shiny black car pulled up. The driver didn't speak, just opened the door. The ride to Reeves Tower felt like going to face a dragon. Emily's hands were sweaty, her heart pounded, but she kept her chin up and her face calm. When they arrived, she didn't go through the regular entrance. The car drove into a private garage underneath the building. An elevator took her straight to the top floor. No stops, no other people. Michael Reeves was waiting when the doors opened. He looked different than yesterday. Tired, older somehow. Like he hadn't slept either. "Thank you for coming," he said formally. "Please, come to my office." Emily followed him down a quiet hallway. Everything was so silent up here, just their footsteps on the thick carpet. They entered the same office from yesterday. The portrait of her father still hung on the wall, watching them. "Sit," Michael said, pointing to a chair. "I'll stand," Emily replied. He nodded like he expected that. "I suppose you want answers." "I want the truth." Michael walked to the window, looking out at the city below. For a long time, he didn't say anything. Then he started talking, and Emily's whole world changed forever. "Your father was the smartest man I ever met," Michael said quietly. "When we met in graduate school, I knew immediately we could do something great together. The Phoenix Project was our dream. Clean, unlimited energy. We were going to change the world. So what happened? Emily demanded. Why is he dead and you're a billionaire? Michael turned to face her. His eyes were full of something Emily didn't expect. Guilt. We got an offer from the Department of Defense, he continued. They wanted to fund our research, millions of dollars, but they wanted us to modify the technology, make it weaponizable. I said yes. Your father said no. So you killed him, Emily said flatly. No! Michael's voice cracked. I didn't kill him, but He stopped, his face twisting with pain. The fire was real, but it wasn't an accident. Your father tried to destroy the lab. He planted explosives to destroy all our research so I couldn't sell it to the military. Emily felt dizzy. Dad tried to blow up the lab? He gave me a choice, Michael said. Walk away from the military contract and release the Phoenix technology to the world for free, or watch him destroy everything we built. I thought he was bluffing. He wasn't. Michael's hands were shaking now. The explosion happened at night. I thought the building was empty, but your father was still inside. He was trying to make sure every piece of data was destroyed. His voice broke completely. I ran in to stop him, to save our work, but the fire spread too fast. I got out. He didn't. Emily felt tears running down her face. You let him die. I tried to save him, Michael shouted. But he wouldn't leave. He kept saying, it has to burn. All of it has to burn. The last thing he said before the ceiling collapsed was, tell Sarah and Emily I'm sorry. The room spun. Emily grabbed the desk to steady herself. You're lying. My mom said you paid her to stay quiet. I did, Michael admitted, because I lied to the police. I told them the fire was an accident. I told them your father was careless with chemicals. I couldn't let anyone know he'd tried to destroy the lab. The military would have investigated. Your mother would have been questioned. You would have grown up knowing your father died committing what they'd call industrial terrorism. So you lied to protect us? Emily didn't believe it. I lied to protect the Phoenix Project, Michael said honestly. But yes, I also didn't want you and your mother to suffer more than you already had. So I paid your mother. I made sure the investigation went away quickly, and I buried the truth. And then you got rich off the technology my father died trying to destroy, Emily said bitterly. Michael looked at the portrait on his wall. Every day for 20 years, I've looked at that picture. Every day, I've wondered if I made the right choice. The Phoenix technology did go to the military. They used it in ways your father feared. People died. Wars were fought. And I became a billionaire. He turned back to Emily. I keep that picture there to remind myself of what I lost. Not just a partner, but the only person who was brave enough to tell me when I was wrong. Your father was a better man than I'll ever be. Emily didn't know what to feel. Anger? Sadness? Confusion? All of it mixed together in her chest until she could barely breathe. Why are you telling me this now? She asked. Because you deserve the truth, Michael said simply, and because I'm dying. Emily's head snapped up. What? Cancer. Same kind that's killing your mother, actually. Ironic, isn't it? Michael gave a bitter laugh. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less, and I realized I can't die with this secret. Your father was a hero, Emily. He sacrificed everything to try to stop a weapon from being made, and the world thinks he was careless and stupid. Michael walked to his desk and pulled out a folder. This contains everything. The real security footage from the night of the fire. Lab records showing your father's attempts to stop the military deal. My own recorded confession. Everything you need to tell the real story. He held it out to Emily. She stared at it, not moving. Why? She whispered. Why give me this now? Because your father's last words were, "Tell them the truth," Michael said, his voice breaking. "And I never did. Let me fix that before I die, please." Emily took the folder with shaking hands. Inside were documents, USB drives, photographs, evidence that could destroy Michael Reeves's legacy, evidence that could give her father back his honor. "What happens when I go public with this?" she asked. "I'll be ruined," Michael said calmly. "Reeves Corporation will collapse. I'll probably go to prison for the time I have left. But your father's name will be cleared. The world will know what really happened, and maybe I can die with a little less guilt." Emily looked up at the portrait one more time. Her father's smile seemed different now. Not happy exactly, more like peaceful, like he knew someday the truth would come out. "I need to think about this," Emily said. "Of course," Michael nodded. "But Emily, I want you to know something. Your father loved you and your mother more than anything in the world. His last words before he died weren't about the project or revenge. They were, 'Tell Sarah and Emily I'm sorry. Tell them I love them.' He died thinking about you." Emily's tears came harder now. She'd spent 20 years thinking her father had died in a stupid accident, that he'd been careless and left them alone. But the truth was so much more complicated. He'd died trying to do the right thing. He'd died a hero. "I have to go," she managed to say. "The car is waiting," Michael said. "And Emily, I truly am sorry. For all of it." Emily walked out without responding. She rode the elevator down in silence, clutching the folder to her chest. The driver took her home without a word. When she got back to the apartment, her mom was awake, sitting up with her oxygen mask on. "Well?" Sarah asked nervously. Emily sat down beside her and told her everything. Every word Michael Reeves had said. About the fire. About her father's last words. About the choice he'd made. When she finished, Sarah was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "All these years," she sobbed. "I thought he'd been careless. I thought he'd abandoned us. But he died trying to save the world." "He died loving us," Emily corrected gently. "Michael said Dad's last words were about us." Sarah grabbed the folder and opened it. Inside was a USB drive labeled "Security Footage, Lab Fire." With trembling hands, she plugged it into Emily's laptop. The video was grainy, but clear enough. It showed her father in the lab late at night. He was setting small explosive devices around the room, carefully, methodically. His face was determined but sad. Then the video switched to a different angle, the entrance. Michael Reeves ran in, shouting. Her father turned to face him. The laptop speakers crackled with their voices. "Matthew, Michael, you have to let it burn. This technology is too dangerous." "Michael, we can control it. We can make sure it's only used for good." "Matthew, you're lying to yourself. Once the military has it, people will die. I won't let that happen." "Michael, please, Matthew, we can work this out. Just stop the countdown." "Matthew, it's too late. In 2 minutes, all of this will be gone. You need to leave, now." "Michael, I'm not leaving you." "Matthew, yes you are, because Sarah and Emily need you to survive. Someone has to take care of them when I'm gone. Promise me, Michael. Promise me you'll make sure they're okay." "Michael, I promise, but you have to come with me." "Matthew, I can't. I have to make sure it all burns. Every bit of data, every piece of research. Please go." The video showed Michael hesitating, then running toward the exit as the first explosion went off. It showed her father turning back to his work, making sure everything would be destroyed. And then, right before the biggest explosion, Matthew Collins looked directly at the camera as if he knew Emily would see this someday. "I love you, Sarah. I love you, Emily. I'm so, so sorry." Then the screen went white as the explosion hit. Emily and her mom sat in silence for a long time after the video ended. Finally, Sarah spoke. He really was a hero, she whispered. Yeah, Emily agreed. He really was. So what are you going to do? Sarah asked. Are you going to release all this? Emily thought about it. She could ruin Michael Reeves, destroy his company, send him to prison for the little time he had left. It would feel good. It would feel like justice. But would her father want that? She remembered Michael's words. Your father's last words were, tell them the truth. Not get revenge, not destroy Michael Reeves. Just tell the truth. I'm going to write an article, Emily decided. I'm going to tell Dad's story, the whole story, the good and the bad. How he tried to stop a weapon from being made, how he sacrificed himself for what he believed was right, and how Michael Reeves kept that secret for 20 years out of guilt. You're not going to get him arrested? Sarah asked. Dad's last request to Michael was to take care of us, Emily said. And he did. He paid for your medicine. He made sure we had enough money to survive. He was wrong about a lot of things, but he kept that promise. I think Dad would want me to tell the truth, not seek revenge. Sarah squeezed Emily's hand. Your father would be so proud of you. Over the next few weeks, Emily worked on the article. She contacted a journalist named Jacob Ward, who had a reputation for taking on powerful people. Together, they verified every piece of evidence. They interviewed former employees who remembered the fire. They tracked down government documents about the Phoenix Project. And through it all, Emily met regularly with Michael Reeves. In his final months, he helped her understand her father better. He shared stories about their time in graduate school, about Matthew's dreams for the future, about the kind of man he'd been before everything fell apart. He used to say that technology should serve people, not profit, Michael told her one afternoon. They were sitting in his office, that portrait of her father watching over them. I forgot that lesson, got seduced by money and power. But your father never forgot, even when it cost him everything. Did you really try to save him that night? Emily asked. Michael nodded. I did. I know you don't believe me, but I did. Not because I cared about him, though I did, but because I was terrified of losing my only real friend. When he refused to leave, when he chose the Phoenix Project over his own life, Michael's voice broke. That's when I realized he was the better man, and I've spent 20 years trying to live with that knowledge. 3 months after their first meeting, Jacob Ward published the article, The Hero Who Died to Stop a Weapon. The true story of Matthew Collins and the Phoenix Project. It went viral immediately. Within hours, millions of people had read about Emily's father, about his sacrifice, about Michael Reeves's cover-up and his deathbed confession. The government was forced to answer questions about the Phoenix Project. Reeves Corporation's stock crashed. Calls for Michael's arrest came from everywhere. But Emily did something unexpected. She gave a press conference where she asked people not to focus on revenge. My father died trying to do the right thing, she told the cameras. He didn't do it for fame or glory. He did it because he believed some things are more important than money or power. Michael Reeves did wrong. He lied. He covered up the truth. But he also took care of my family when we had no one else. He kept my father's last wish. And now, at the end of his life, he's trying to make things right. That takes courage, too. Not everyone agreed with Emily's mercy. There were protests, lawsuits, investigations. But Emily didn't care. She'd done what she set out to do. She told the truth about her father. The rest was up to the world to decide. Michael Reeves died 2 months later. In his will, he left everything to a new foundation dedicated to ethical technology development. The foundation was named after Matthew Collins. At the funeral, Emily stood in the rain with a small group of people. Michael had no family, and most of his friends had abandoned him after the scandal. But Emily came, because she'd realized something important in those final months. People are complicated. They can be both heroes and villains. They can do terrible things and still try to make them right. Michael Reeves had let her father die, but he'd also kept his promise to take care of Emily and her mother.
He'd hidden the truth, but he'd also revealed it before he died. Was he a good man? Emily didn't know. Maybe there was no simple answer. As they lowered Michael's casket into the ground, Emily thought about both men, her father and Michael Reeves. Two brilliant people who'd wanted to change the world, one who'd sacrificed everything for his principles, one who'd compromised them and spent the rest of his life regretting it. Emily's mom died peacefully 6 months later. With the money from Michael's foundation, she'd been able to get better treatment. She'd lived long enough to see her husband honored, to know that he'd been a hero, to finally let go of 20 years of guilt. At her mother's funeral, Emily placed two things in her casket: her father's old watch and a copy of the article that told his story. She imagined them together now, her parents, finally at peace with the truth. Years passed. The scandal faded from the headlines. New technology emerged. The world moved on, like it always does. But Emily never forgot. She took the money from Michael's foundation and went back to school. She became a journalist, specializing in ethical technology. She spent her life making sure that what happened to her father, brilliant minds being corrupted by greed and power, didn't happen to others. And in her office, she kept a photograph. Not the one from Michael Reeves's wall, but a different one. A picture of her family from when she was 5 years old. Her mom and dad were smiling, holding her between them at a park. They looked so young and happy, so full of hope. Sometimes Emily would look at that picture and wonder what her father would think of her now. Would he be proud? Would he think she'd done the right thing by showing mercy to Michael Reeves? She liked to think he would, because in the end, her father hadn't died out of hatred or revenge. He'd died because he believed in something bigger than himself. He'd believed that some truths were worth any price. And Emily had honored that belief by telling his story, all of it. The complicated, messy, beautiful truth. On quiet nights, when she was working late, and the city lights twinkled outside her window, Emily would sometimes whisper to that photograph, "I found out the truth, Dad, and I told everyone. You were a hero. I made sure the world knows that now. I hope you're proud of me. I hope you're finally at rest." And in the silence that followed, Emily could almost feel her father's presence. Not the tortured man who'd died in a fire, not the tragic hero who'd sacrificed everything. Just Dad, the man who'd loved her and her mother more than anything in the world. The man who'd done what he thought was right, even when it cost him everything. The truth had set them all free. Emily, her mother, even Michael Reeves in his final months. The secrets had been buried for 20 years, poisoning everyone they touched. But now, finally, the truth was out, and Emily could move forward, carrying her father's legacy not as a burden, but as a gift. She was Matthew Collins's daughter, the daughter of a hero, and she would spend her life making sure that heroes like him weren't forgotten, and that people like Michael Reeves, complicated, flawed, human, were given the chance to make things right before it was too late. Because in the end, that's what her father had believed in: second chances, redemption. The idea that even in our darkest moments, we can still choose to do the right thing. Emily turned back to her computer, to the article she was working on about another whistleblower, another person trying to stop dangerous technology from hurting people. She typed with purpose, with passion, with the knowledge that she was continuing her father's work in her own way. And somewhere, in whatever place people go when they die, she hoped Matthew Collins was smiling, not just at her,
but at Michael Reeves, too, because they'd both finally done what he'd asked them to do all those years ago.
They told the truth. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Bemzy Stories right now and hit that notification bell. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the truth always matters, no matter how long it takes to come out. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Emily's position. Would you have shown mercy or sought revenge? Your thoughts matter to us. Thank you for being part of the Bemzy Stories family, where every story reminds us that courage, truth, and redemption are always possible. The end.